It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to It's About to Go Down. I am Marc Williams.
And I'm Cathey Armillas. We have our good friend, Gina Riley. We're super excited to have her on. Gina's part of our Speaker Skills Academy community, where we talk about how everybody can be great at speaking. I don't know, though. Gina's already a great speaker, right, Marc? She's a great speaker. She's a great storyteller. So super excited to chat with her today. Gina Riley of Gina Riley Consulting. She's also of Talents Group Executive Search. Gina's a career transition coach. She has helped so many people transition their career, transition to new careers, transition to executive careers. So super excited to kind of chat about that. Her idea, Marc, is this. I love this. So Gina said that when she was 16 years old, her career journey started. And she truly believes that everyone has a unique journey and everyone has a unique story. But like, how do we communicate it? How do we get better at communicating it so we can be heard? Gina Riley, our friend, welcome to our show. Glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your idea, Gina, and your shirt.
Yes. So I dug this out. I have had this t-shirt since I was 16 years old. And when I was in high school, I was really privileged to be a part of a leadership program that came to our town in Phoenix. And what 3 schools in our district did was they handpicked 50 leaders, I'm using air quotes, from the 3 different high schools and sent all 150 off to have a weekend immersive experience with some incredible motivational speakers. And these speakers had come from the world of sports and some other lines of work, but these were experienced people that had either been an athlete or worked with athletes. One was an NBA champion. One was a swim coach for the Olympic team. It was Stan Schofield, Willie Mitchell, Walter Hollins, just incredibly dynamic people. And back then, that was the just say no to drugs era. So part of what they were doing was doing a road show to try to tap into the youth and building people's confidence, young people's confidence in themselves, so that they could build better relationships with their friends and their families, and then help them communicate better, which I know now that communication is the thing that helps us get that heart-to-heart connection. And so when I was 16, I was a part of that program. And then the next year, I became an all-star trainer. I got chosen to do that. And so then I got to go on the retreats and be a student leader and sit in those small breakout groups and facilitate conversations. So I was doing that by the age of 17.
Wow.
So
She's been speaking since she was a teen. That's amazing. I'm going to take a left turn just for 1 second so that we can veer on the right track. I wish they wouldn't have stopped doing the Just Say No campaign. And I think that they came up with some data that said that it didn't work. But as we all know, data can be molded and shaped into any way we want it to. I think just from a strict psychological factor, repeating that message over and over again is something kids need to hear. I wish they would. I wish it was something they were still doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was part of the power of the program. I mean, that was a part of it, but really what it was about was tapping into that sense of that lack of belonging that we feel when we are kids, and helping people bring forth their awesome sauce, as I would now say it, so that they can just confidently step out in the world and just feel proud of themselves no matter where they are in their life.
Gina, since you first put on that t-shirt, what is it about that moment that is so important to who you are today?
Oof. The thing that I think is important, or what kind of clicked for me in the early days, was the fact that, and I think a lot of people can relate, I didn't feel seen and heard. No matter how loud my actual voice was, the little but mighty, I didn't necessarily feel seen. I didn't feel like, my parents heard me. I don't know that I thought that my parents heard me. And so my journey has been about increasingly articulating what I want to say in more and more powerful ways so that I don't have to say so much.
Mm. Mm.
Mm.
I love Mark's reaction.
Well, because, we all know that I've got this educative program, of course, parent of teenagers. So I'm just always thinking about this stuff. And I'm so intrigued by, one, never being seen or heard, or never being felt like you were seen or heard by your parents, right? And then being on this journey of being able to articulate yourself, even without saying so many words. And what is it about this 16-year-old Gina that gave you the opportunity to do that? Like what was specifically was going on that other people could learn from, parents of teenagers or teenagers themselves? What was it about that experience that helped you to articulate in a way that you needed to?
I've never been asked the question in that way, but if I'm answering on the fly, I think it is because that first weekend event gave space for every single student that was there an opportunity to say what they wanted to say in small groups. And all the prompts, as you might well imagine with your experiences, were not superficial. It was deep stuff. We were talking about relationships with our parents, or with our peer, any type of relationship that we had going on. We had facilitators who brought that stuff out of us and gave us a safe space to do it. And what they did intentionally is they were bringing together leaders of different cliques at each high school. So you weren't there with all the football players and cheerleaders. You were there with the people that were perceived leaders of any given clique that we can put a label on. The skaters, the geeks, the whatever, fill in the blank, the drama people, right? So when we all got together, it was people that then would go back into the school community to start to live out those better ways of talking with other people, the kindness that we would extend to each other with the listening that we were doing. And so that was the power of the program, was that it wasn't one group of people. It was a lot of different kinds of people there. And I learned by those facilitators' examples of how to make space for other people by me having the space allowed for myself, by them giving me the space.
Wow, Gina. This is one of these moments, Mark, I know, where we're both like, God, wish we went through a program like that, right? Yeah, it's something that I would absolutely sign up for today as an adult. So to have that experience is amazing, and it makes sense then what you do with what you do now, Gina, and the thread that has been prevalent in your life is making space for people, trying to get their story out of them, trying to make sure they're seen and heard, right? And that's also why you're so damn good at your job and what you do. It makes all kinds of sense to me. I have a question just to fast forward it. And Mark, I don't know if you want to go back to her childhood at all, please feel free. But I want to bridge that gap now because I'm pretty excited about the work she does now with people. So especially within transitioning, Gina, tell us a little bit about what it is you do to help people get to that story and to see and to feel important and find that thread in their life.
Yeah. It's taken me many years to develop this. So it took a couple of solid years of doing research on what it takes to make a good career transition. I listened to, in one year, 102 different podcasts. I read 20 books. I studied, I followed other coaches, and also I've built my own training programs too, because I've got a master's in organizational development. And really what I've evolved to is helping people first articulate their unique value proposition. What is their solution that they provide to the world as a professional? So there are personal and professional things that we're doing, but obviously my bread and butter is to help people make the professional transition. But they're bringing their human along with them, right? So that's what I'm doing, is tapping into the moving micro parts of what it takes to build and develop a unique value proposition, because I firmly believe if you don't have that intact, you then are not able to build an effective resume that represents you. You cannot build an effective LinkedIn profile that is attractive and attracting recruiters. And you don't really know what you stand for, so you can't build like thought leadership some thought leadership on the back of that. So who are you? That's what I'm after before I start to help unfold the rest of the story. And what I have found as I work with people, some have a straighter line than others. I've had some people with really twisty, turny career journeys, and they don't know how to answer. So tell me about yourself. They don't know. They're like, well, what do you want to hear about? Do you want to hear that I was in the military and then I went and then I did these other things and then I went into corporate? Like which part of that am I telling you? And I've helped them figure that out, because there's some reoccurring thing that people do because of their natural talents that seem to come up again and again, because that's what they're applying to their work and in their lives. And that's what makes you unique and special.
And the words of our good friend Chris, that was gold.
Where's the unicorn hat when you need it?
I know. Just this thing about, first of all, I've had so many conversations with people about the most difficult interview question on the planet. So who are you? Or tell me about yourself. And of course, that's probably the one question you probably should have an answer to, and yet most people don't have an answer to it. And then when you said, look for the reoccurring thread. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Gina, do you ever find that what may be difficult with finding that thread is, well, let me ask it this way. Why do you think it's so hard for people to unravel that thread?
Because it is hard to read the label when you are inside of the jar.
Oh, that's
not my quote.
Okay.
I took it from Kristen Sherry.
Oh, I love it.
That will be in my book, and she says she did not come up with it, so I cannot quote her directly because it came from somewhere else, and I don't know.
It's just a great quote that's going around. I love it.
Yeah. And what I will say
it again. Say it one more time though, Gina.
It's hard to read the label when you are inside of the jar. And so what I say is I am a jar label reader.
Ooh.
I'm turning the jar around, I'm reading the ingredients, seeing what's the most important, because that's the first thing on there, right? Mm-hmm. And then what's the branding on the front? Right. So one of my favorite clients, amazing chief marketing officer of a popular consumer products brand. And he's a marketeer. That's his expertise, 20 years, right? Helped grow a brand from like just millions to like hundreds of millions, right? And when I read back to him all of the synthesis work that I had done over about 3 weeks with him, he sat back and he nodded and he took a big breath and he didn't cry, but there was emotion there. He was like, that's me. And I went, yeah, it's hard to read your own label, marketeer, when you're inside of your own jar. And he went, yes, he was a little breathless. It was really beautiful. Yeah, it was emotional.
That is really beautiful, Gina. And Mark and I know your work pretty well. Although we've never actually seen you do your work, but obviously your brilliance spills out of your own jar, right? If I can read your jar for a minute. That's
I'll start training.
an open jar. Now
She's an all-star. That's what I read on the label.
Yeah, she's an all-star, exactly. No, I think wow. I think, in hearing what you do and then hearing what Mark said, that this is like the world's toughest interview question, which I've personally never thought about that, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because, you've got everything in your little buckets, right? You've got, I did this. I have experience with that. I worked for so-and-so. I did this with this organization. Who are you? Oh my God, I don't know. I love that what you do and what you do so well is to help people get that out and to be able to see it clearly. It's something that I think we all should do from time to time. Don't you think?
And yet it's so difficult. And so I'm inspired by a question, Cathey, that I've often heard you ask, and I'm going to put it in Gina's jar. Gina, how do you help people, or how can people figure out how to read their own label when they are inside the jar?
Yeah, there's a number of ways, but the process I take people through, and it's something that people can do on their own, having a coach, whether it's me or just a mentor or someone else, you don't have to pay for coaching, is to get some outside perspective from someone you trust and who's willing to be honest and constructive with you. So we'll say that. But I'm writing a book right now, actually, and the first 5 moving parts, I broke down to the micro level exactly how to do this. And I'm actually talking to the Nike Alumni Association in a couple of days, presenting that and walking people through this process so they can develop their UVP, their unique value proposition, right? So what I have people do is first take the Strengths Finder, which is a part of a larger assessment that I use as a coach, and it's called the UMAP. And it was designed by Kristen Cherry. It's a award-winning careers innovation tool to use, an assessment. And so when you unpack your top 5 strengths from Strengths Finder, Gallup says you're 1 in 33 million people who have taken the Strengths Finder that have that unique combination. So that gives me a lot of hope and a lot of I know that's credible information. That's a statistic I can get behind. That's different than personality assessments like Myers-Briggs that have some flaws in it. Like, it's definitely a valid tool and something that I've enjoyed participating in, but the Strengths Finder is a valid instrument that tells us these are your top 5 strengths. And what are your strengths? It's how you do what you do. It's how you apply what you do. How do you execute on things? How do you think about things? How do you relate to people? And once you know what those top 5 in combination are, and then you describe the things that you actually do and perform at work, then you can start explaining how. Do you tend to work through people and develop them and mentor them? Or do you tend to think strategically and look around the corner and are futuristic? What are those things? And that's what makes us different. But here's the catch. Most people, even when they see that, they're like, yeah, so what? That's me. Isn't that normal? Doesn't everyone else think strategically? Or doesn't everyone see individuals as unique and different? I'm like, no, there's 34 strength themes. Your 5 in combination is how you do what you do. Now we have a foundation to work off of. Then I learn about what people value, and I take their top 3 values and I weave into the narrative the why they do what they do and how it applies to their work. Now, there's values that also apply maybe personally as well. Then I look at their leadership approach, because I'm working with executives and leaders. So I use a different assessment for that, and I tease out language about how they work with people during times of change and transition. I use the adaptive leadership model. It was created by 2 Harvard professors. And what I learned from the leaders I work with is, how they gather information. How do they encourage people to work through tough times? How do they make sure that they are listening to voices on the fringe? Exactly how do they do that? So now we're starting to weave together their strengths, their values, their leadership approach, and then we spend time literally having them download their entire career story from the time they left school. I ask a little bit about their early years because I want to know, I want to hear it, but then I take them through and we have them tell me their whole story. And then I go and I write it and synthesize it into a nice, succinct narrative. Then we pull out the thread because I can see how did they get their next job and how did they get the next job? Oh, I got promoted. Or, oh yeah, I got tapped on the shoulder to take on a struggling team and product line. This last person I just worked with who just made an incredible transition from a major global company to a mid-sized growing company, she was able to translate and transfer those skills, even though she doesn't have direct expertise, because she could show, I know how to take a brand new product that you want to launch, build the technology, build a team of 100 people globally, and launch it to success. She's got a track record of doing that multiple times and was able to influence a leader who was going to hire her to take on a product that she had zero experience on. So what we're doing is we're pulling together, and why and how, because she's a super strong leader. I really care about culture. I'm an engineering leader who's really proud of I got an award at my company for being like one of the best talent acquisition partners internally. So she knows how to hire talent. She knows how hard it is to land people. And then she develops them and promotes them when they are there. And she's tapped in. So this is what I'm doing is I'm pulling apart and everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story. And then what's the next piece? What are the top career results that I am really proud of? So I'm having people list like their top 5 things so they can weave in like, here's some examples of my work. So there's more to it because you can, I'm just giving you some highlights reel. But once you unravel all of that, but it's 5 moving parts, and then you pull the thread together, then you can see what the reoccurring theme is.
Wow, that's deep. So then tell me this, I'm often inspired by another question that Cathey has asked in the past. Cathey calls me the king of questions, but Cathey's got cornered that market. When I hear all of that, and it makes so much sense, I'm inspired to ask you, what is the myth that people have been getting wrong in terms of unraveling their stories?
What are they getting wrong? What they're getting wrong is they're not preparing it. The reason I built this program, it's called Career Velocity, is because of my experience as an executive search consultant going to market for a CEO or a chief operating officer and getting mature professionals on the screen. And I'm like, I've got 5 minutes for you to tell me about yourself and 8 prepared questions based on the skills that I'm looking for. Tell me about yourself. Just give me a highlights reel. I actually had a man tell me about yourself for 20 minutes. This is not a client. This is a candidate, right? So this happens again and again and again. But if you haven't done the hard work, and some of it is like that soul, it's more than soul searching. It's really just being able to articulate the unique place that you take in the world as a business solution. We are in an age where we will not have one job the whole rest of our lives. We're going to have to make multiple career transitions. What are you doing to set yourself up to explain what you do quickly and succinctly? One of my clients recently landed, it was a long, long career transition because he was replacing one global sales leadership job for another. And it took the better part of a year. And we were instant messaging with each other. And I said, what's the most valuable thing that you learned from my program? And he said, I use my tell me about yourself all the time because I am a new employee in a big global company. And every time I meet someone, boom, that's what I say is my tell me about yourself.
The really short version, right? Not the 20-minute version.
No, exactly. Well, I tell the people I want it in 3 to 5 minutes. Boom.
I love that you clarified that wasn't a client, because we all know when people go very verbose and they're long-winded. No, I really want to make a point on this, Gina. I love it. Great. When you were talking, I was reminded once again, listening to you, going, why would you ever do something like this without a coach? You're so brilliant. You've spent all your time focusing on that. And I even had this thought. I don't know if this is even true or not, but I was thinking, I have been taking the Myers-Briggs test every single year for 12 years now, 12 or 13. I take it every year around the same time in the fall. And it's changed over time. And one of the things I was thinking when you were talking, I was like, the input that somebody has when they take a test, I feel like it's always going to be subject to how they're feeling about themselves, no matter what, even with the strengths. It's like the way you answer, how you're feeling about yourself. And, of course, the tests are designed to ask you the question in many different ways. So it's not that you're able to totally skew it or anything, but here's where the little tiny minute variance comes in. They work with somebody like you, like a coach, they're really going to be honed from an outside perspective on things that they maybe weren't very much aware of. The things most people could tell you, oh, I'm really bad at math. Oh, I'm really creative or something. They're the easy stuff. Yeah. But I think what I love about what I'm hearing from you, Gina, is that you're getting down to these little minute details. And when you talk about things at the highest level, I'm talking about Olympic athletes. We're talking about things that are down to the smallest of smallest variances.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you touched upon something that even beyond career transitions, I mean, people have a really hard time talking about themselves. Mm-hmm. Really difficult time. And whether I'm meeting my future mother-in-law for the first time, or I'm sitting at the dinner table and the kids are like, so what do you do?
Again? What was it again?
I mean, we all are faced with, explaining these things, and it's so hard. And, Gina, you got me thinking about the first job I ever had and what I might discover about my thread through that first job.
Exactly.
Sounds like we should play a game, Marc.
I just laid it up and you dunked it.
I came for the dunk because I was like, Marc laid this up. So
you just gave me goosebumps. That is what I'm talking about, though, is when you go and you chronicle out what every single move was and then the why. And in my book, I literally have a table that goes to the micro of asking people what to think about so they can write it down. It's very, very detailed. But then they are challenged to then go look and say, was there a reoccurring pattern, or was there some why that made me go from one thing to another? Sometimes there's a really big career pivot where people see their career evolving in a different way, but what was the catalyst? Well, you could probably go back to something to the earlier days that was instilled in them, or some event that happened. And I'm not going deep with some kind of psychological thing. I'm not a therapist, so I'm not doing I'm not doing therapy with people, although it probably feels that way at times. But there could be something.
So the game I thought we could play, which I think is very interesting, is what was your first job and what did you learn from that?
Marc.
Yeah, since you brought it up, Marc. Since you laid it up.
So I'm going to go with my first unofficial job.
Mm.
My first unofficial job, when I think I was in elementary school, was every Sunday morning, I would knock on 3 or 4 doors of the same neighbors, and I'd get their list of what they wanted me to get from the grocery store.
Oh.
And I would go and get it, I'd bring it back, and they'd give me a few dollars or whatever. I was Instacart way before there was an Instacart.
Or Uber
I
Eats.
just didn't know how to turn it into a business.
Technology had to catch up with you, Marc.
So what did you learn? But what did you learn, Marc?
I think what I learned was that I really want to be able to do stuff for people so that I can save them the time and the energy. That's just what popped into my head. And I used my ability to remember things to do that.
That is cool.
Super cool. It's why you're a good coach. It's why you're a good coach.
Why you're a good coach, Gina.
So that's like where that internal motivation is, right? That's really cool. I've obviously thought about this kind of a question a lot because that's what I do. And I mean, I won't go back to the high school jobs where you're just kind of making money. For me, I intentionally sought out things that would help me advance into being a trainer of some sort. I had big dreams of being the trainer, the kinds of trainers that I had as my mentors in high school. And this is before the big Tony Robbins that kind of thing. But that's what I thought for myself is I'm going to be like that. Or I'll be traveling around doing high school programs or something. And my life took different twists and turns, not dramatically, but I got married and went a different route. But I found my way through human resources, like working in recruiting and talking to people and, getting a master's degree that helped me build training programs and being a really good consultant. And so my thread continues because it always comes back to some kind of level of communication and relationship building in order to advance something, some purpose.
You've thought about that one for a while.
Oh, tons. One of the most impactful experiences I've ever had related to my career is I got an unpaid internship. The intern coordinator peddled me off to somebody that he knew in our ecosystem in Phoenix who had his own communications company. And this man got hired by Motorola to come in to a huge group of people, engineers, and do a training program on effective communication. So this guy had a binder this big, 3-ring binder. I was eating it up, all the different ways to communicate better, small group breakouts, all the things. Well, there's this woman, this little petite Asian engineer woman, and she raises her hand in front of the whole group and asks this man, I can't get anybody to listen to me, and nobody respects me, and it's just really frustrating. And
oops, I muted her. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. I did that. I'm sorry. I was putting your hand down.
In front of I don't know why it's waving. In front of the whole group, he very kindly and gently said, you are going to need to work on your voice because your voice is reducing people's ability to hear you and it's reducing your impact. It's too high pitched. You're talking too fast. And he said it in a nice way. I was like, literally, I'm 19 or 20 when I'm hearing this. So I'm 55 now. I'm recollecting. But the power of his honesty, I felt like it was kind that he was honest. I felt like what he said was correct. And I have never forgotten it. So it's like these little nuggets that I've gotten from mentors over time, or even the way that my mentors have interacted with me. Like Cathey, I've been with you a number of times, like you came to visit me at my house. When I'm watching and listening to you, there's these little things that I pick up like, oh, that's just such a better way to listen or communicate better. And I'm just trying to absorb that from people all the time about, okay, what's a better way to connect because I'm listening better or I'm asking the right kind of questions.
I love that. Well, I'll share. I was going to share my job, but what Gina said really inspired me to share something different that happened around the time I had my first job. It's that's way less interesting because my first job was Baskin Robbins, and then my second was Jenny Craig. So it was always this like weird like dichotomy of places. But what I will say is there was a guy that came to my high school, and I think I was a junior the year that he came, and his name was David Toma, and he was a New Jersey cop. And the show Beretta was actually about his life. He had gotten, so you've seen Beretta. Have you watched Beretta, Mark?
Okay,
you have. Oh my God.
On the sparrow.
Wow. Okay. This is all right. I'm going to bring this all together then.
Here we go.
It's going to it ties with what Gina was saying. So David Toma was the guy that he's the real life Jersey cop that the show was based on, not the actual actor, which is Robert, whatever that guy's name was, right? It's Robert something. But anyway, what he was known for was that he would always like dress in different costumes and he would catch people that were doing bad things. A lot of drug dealers, especially during that time when it was the big just say no to drug time kind of thing, you know? But what happened to him is one day he was first responder on the scene of a little kid that was choking. And he's talking about this as he's at the school. And, you know, the way it works is all the responders show up, and whoever shows up, they're all pretty much trained on EMT. So if there's a medical emergency and they have to take care of it, they just do. So he showed up and there was a little boy that was choking to death. And so he did the Heimlich on the kid and saved the kid's life. And he went home that night. And wow, the universe has a way of like really throwing some irony at you sometimes. And his own child started choking at the dinner table. And because of the change of scenery, he froze and he choked. And he wasn't able to save his child, and his child passed. And he told the story. I know, here I am. I'm like 16 or 17 years old, and I'm listening to the story. And it caused him to spiral into this deep depression. And so he started getting help for it. And then he started taking some medicine for it, which at the time, I don't think they were very good at using medicine the right way. And soon he found himself addicted to drugs. And he told us the story, and he said, here I was, the guy that was out there, you know, saving the world from drugs. And now I'm that person. Well,
Wow.
he went on and to say that one day he woke up and it was the guilt of that pushed him to get clean. He was like, I can't handle that guilt. My family lost a husband, a father, because I'm now in this world. Well, he got clean, and the first thing that he did was he started going to schools, and he decided he wanted to spread the love that way. And when I tell you both that he was the motivational speaker of all motivational speakers, he was so good and he was so dialed. He would tell the administrators of the school, Mark, you got to love this as a past administrator of a school. He would tell them, please put trash cans outside of the assembly hall. I'm going to tell the kids to throw their drugs away. And you have to promise me that if any kids throw their drugs in there, there's no questions asked. Because if I earn that trust when I'm speaking to them, you have to keep it. They agreed. And when he went to schools where they would agree, he would do that. And kids would come outside of these assembly halls throwing their drugs away because of the message that he said. And it wasn't just because he learned how to say the words right. It's, Gina, because of what you said, this thread in his life that showed up in different forms in different ways, he was able to talk about this from every different location. And I remember thinking at that time, now you all know my story. I've never had a sip of alcohol or drugs or anything in my entire life. And I think one of the reasons is because of him. It was during a time in my life that I was susceptible to that. But I also remember at that moment thinking, I want to make an impact someday. I don't know how. I had no idea I was going to become a speaker and then a speaker coach. My goodness. But but that is that is that thread in there. And he was able to carry that thread through. And about 8 years ago, I wrote him a letter. Wrote him a hand letter and I sent it to him. He was in his 80s at the time, so I don't know if he ever got it. I never heard back, but I just said, I know you've probably received a lot of letters from people thanking you for saving their lives, because I saw it on his website. Lots of people that wrote him and said, I stopped doing drugs because I heard you. I stopped. I said, I'm probably one of the few that's going to write you and say, I never did drugs because of you. And I became a motivational speaker and speaker coach. So there you go.
There you go. It gave me goosebumps. I mean, just the that man had a thread, and then you've got a thread. You've got a catalyst.
It almost makes me think too, Gina. Sorry, Mark, you were just going to say something. I was just thinking, it almost makes me think too that, many times people's work and their threads can be carried through other people. So that's the impact that you make when you're in your career, is that somebody might grab a little tiny piece of your thread and then they are now pulling that through for others.
So it's like a whole tapestry of your connections.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that down.
I like that.
Tapestry of your connections. I like that.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you for that thought. I was going to add this. I went to a book club meeting many years ago, and the person in front of the room was, he asked this question, he goes, so you know how we've all been asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he goes, here's what I've discovered, that whatever you said you were going to be and whatever you ended up being, and he didn't use this word, Gina, but I'll use it. There's a thread that connects both. Because the point that he was making was, we spend so much time pursuing titles and positions, when in actuality, what we're really pursuing is the thread.
Ooh.
It's what the position allows you to do.
Yeah.
What you're really chasing.
Which I would say also harkens into a person's why. And a person's why can change and develop over time. And that's okay. And and our why is based on our values. And it's our purpose. And I'm not doing the whole lofty, Simon Sinek, start with why. I actually start with how, because the strengths are our how. How do you do what you do? And then why do you do what you do? And that underpins the what you do.
I'm going to tie two things that you both said, and I'm going to bring it together. Many times, Gina, we talk about this because Mark usually ends up off of our show episodes, and he's like, "Yep, I'm going to dinner with my family right now. I'm going to go have a dinner table conversation." And so many times we will tease around something that he can talk to his family about. And so this is always a top of mind. So I'm going to throw this out there. I was thinking about this when you both were talking about, we tell that to kids a lot, or we ask kids, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what is it? What is it? What is it? And it's really hard for kids because they don't have exposure. They only hear the common things that they hear, right? They see, a basketball player, they hear about a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, police officer, the easy stuff, right? The stuff that's kind of visible to them. But what if the question that we ask kids, which ties to the value thing that you're talking about, Gina, what if we ask them, who do you want to be when you grow up? Who do you want to be? Like, who who do you want to be? Somebody that is kind and helpful? Do you want to be somebody that's creative? Because I think you'll find some of those, as you're digging through with adults and you're finding their values. I bet if kids were a little bit more in tune with like who they wanted to be,
Mhm.
it would teach them and show them the direction of what they could be. Like if you don't have empathy for others and you don't want to teach others, well then don't be a teacher. Like that's gonna be a terrible job for you if that's not your goal. Anyway, just a thought I thought about.
I want to build on that and say what you inspired me to think about was, how do you want to do what you want to do?
Hmm.
Um,
Mhm.
I love the who because the who takes away the focus on the what position. I love that.
Exactly.
And I love the who being around. This is the kind of person I want to be, regardless of what the job is. When Gina, you said that for you, it starts with how, that's what then also inspired me to ask about like, how do you want to do certain things, right?
Mhm.
It even makes me think of whatever, my son or my daughter's first job is. How do you do that? Right? How do you want to do that? Right? How do you want to speak to those kids that you're a counselor for? How do you want to show up? Right? And it gets them thinking about their approach to things as well. I think all three of these questions are truly powerful. I don't even think there has to be one or the other, but I think giving them an opportunity to go beyond, you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or, ruler of the planet.
Well,
Yeah.
I see it as overlapping concentric circles of like the who you are, why you do what you do, how you do what you do. It's the who, what, why, and how is what it is. And the strengths are the how, the values are the what or the why. The skills that you apply and learn over time are the what you do to do what you do. And the who you are is your personality.
Hmm.
Look at you. Look at you tapping into the teacher talking about your concentric circles. All right, go ahead, Gina. Go
Come on,
ahead, Gina.
Gina. Come on,
And
Gina.
then running through that is the career thread.
Yeah. And the tapestry of your connections.
What you talking about, Gina? Talking about Gina.
What you talking about?
I know what Gina's talking about.
It's my favorite thing to say.
Anybody watching, it's a callback to what Gina told us. She used to have a shirt that said, I know what Willis is talking about. So
From different strokes for people that are not familiar.
yeah.
Because it takes different strokes to rule the world.
Yeah.
Go ahead, throw out that lyric. I love my TV theme song.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Gina, this is an awesome conversation. Thank you, because again, I feel that it goes even beyond career transition. I think there's
Oh my gosh.
so many reasons why we need to create that concentric circle of the who, the what, the why, and the how to figure out the thread.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful.
It underpins the thread. It powers the thread.
Yes. Yes. So tell us, Gina, after having a conversation about this for the past hour or so, what stood out for you in this conversation? What are you taking away into your next coaching session?
Oh my goodness. What am I taking away to my next coaching session? I love where we ended. Actually, I love because I love frameworks and models, because frameworks and models help me deepen my understanding of concepts, right? As you bring to our SSA each week, that is what the mental models is what our brain can fall back on when we don't have the piece of paper, right? It's the same when I prep people for interviews. I use a specific framework and method so that they can easily recall the 4 steps they're going to tell a story. That's one example. or it's the unique value proposition. There are frameworks, there's micro frameworks within the framework, drawing out strengths and values and so on, and leadership approach. So I think that this conversation just further solidifies for me the importance that these frameworks have in our lives, simple frameworks that can help us remember and go back to and recall so that we can communicate more succinctly.
Mm-hmm.
Does that work?
Amazingly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, but before we go, because Cathey likes to throw this one out at us every once in a while. So, Cathey, what are you taking away from this conversation?
So much. But I think the biggest thing that's coming to mind for me right now is when you both were talking about that question that becomes really hard for people of like, who are you? I think the thing that is really bubbling up for me is that everybody needs to have an answer to that. And it shouldn't be this surface level, like it should be an answer that's filled with values. It's filled with past experiences. It's filled with your past connections. What are all those little magnets in the world that kind of came together to help form who you are? That's what's really sticking with me. And I feel really inspired to share it with the kids in my life because they're always having pressure on what they should do when they grow up. And so I'm inspired by this to share the message of them understanding who they are as a unique person and figuring out who they are before they figure out what they do.
Aw.
Awesome.
I'm envisioning like a children's book here.
Uh-oh.
I gotta get through one book first.
You should, Gina, but that one would be easy. It's like it'll take you one afternoon to write it for a kid. She's like,
You're an author, it's not like that.
oh yeah, all the things to make the book, but the content you could do
like that. And then before you know it, there'll be 3 books because there's Three's Company. Oh, that was so cheesy.
I'm knocking my door.
Mark had to add that in there. You had to get it in, Mark.
I had to get it in.
That is hilarious.
Oh, well, Gina, the queen of the tapestry of connections, the queen of unraveling the thread. For those who, whether they want to come to you because they're trying to figure out how to make that transition in their career, or they just want to pick your brain because they're trying to figure out who the hell they are.
Uh-oh.
How do they find you? How do they learn more about you? How do they find out about the upcoming book?
Oh my gosh. Upcoming book will be Q2 of next year at this point, 2025, for those listening to this on delay. And it'll have something with career velocity in the title, and that's my program. They can find me at GinaRayleighConsulting.com, and I have a free webinar that people can watch for a half hour and create their own career transition plan with a workbook. And it's not a sales pitch at all. So it's pretty cool. And I'm on LinkedIn. So I love personalized connection requests. Hey, I heard you on the podcast. Would love to connect. That's great. I mostly work with leaders and executives for about a year on working through a whole plan, because typically if you're replacing a CEO job, it's 2% of the marketplace that you're trying to tap into. It's pretty tiny and it takes a long time. So that's kind of what I do. Would you like one last show and tell?
Yes, please.
Oh, please.
Right here behind my desk. I have to grab it. I meant to do it before, but you guys are going to die. So check this out.
Love her chair.
When I was about 17, when I got done doing the couple of years of All Stars, I made myself a poster. This is a poster. Like all the quotes from these awesome motivational speakers.
Aww.
A few of them: be the best you can be. It's not who you aren't, it's who you are. Some cool stuff. You are the only one like you. Create, don't imitate. Good, better, best. Don't let it rest till your good is better and your better is best.
Ooh.
I Ideas are funny little things. They won't work unless you do.
Ooh.
We cannot do everything at once, but we can do something at once.
Mm.
So these were just some of the things that, I had on my wall growing up to inspire me and have these men's words in my brain.
Awesome.
You should take a picture of that, Gina, and put it out in the world somewhere. That's super cool. That is so unique. I love that.
It's a little tattered. Life is a journey, not a destination.
Mm.
Right?
So good.
All the cool stuff. I know. Story of my life right on there.
There you go. Life is a journey, not a destination. And Gina is must-see TV.
Ooh, that's true. That's so good, Mark.
Let's do 2 Addams Family snaps up.
Love it.
Gina, this is so awesome. Cathey, it's always awesome being in the same room with you. Even when we're not in the same room, we're always in the same room. Hope everybody enjoyed this conversation today and it's got you thinking about who you are and what that thread is for you so that you can figure out what you need to do or make sure that that purpose finds you. Gina, it was so awesome having you on. And if there's anybody out there who wants to join Cathey and I for some must-have conversations around ideas, check us out on our website. It's about to go down show. Check us out on our YouTube channel. And if you want to join us or if you know somebody who wants to join us, call us up, contact us, reach out to us. We'd love to have a conversation with you about how you could take your idea and share it with the world. And until you do, and until you tune into the next episode, remember we always, always have a good time. That's it. You see what I did there? Good time.
Good times.
We always have good time or it's about to go down.